With so many games getting that remake treatment, it got me thinking, what other games are out there that really deserve a remake of their own? This is my top 5 games that I want to see remade, not just a HD port. I want a full, built from the ground up remake of these classic games to suit the current gen graphics and gameplay. To have the clunky mechanics removed, quality of life features added, and for these games to be fully revitalized in the current gaming market. Guys, my name is Pixel Sean and welcome to my top 5 games that need to be remade. If you do like the video, please go ahead, leave it a like, it definitely helps out the channel, and also let me know in the comments below which games you think deserve that sweet, sweet remake love. Let's get into my list, starting off at number 5, Sly Cooper. Slooper Cooper, Sloopy Coopy, Snoopy, Snoop. Sly was first introduced to the world on the PS2 way back in 2002 and was well received by fans and critics alike. It's a 3D platformer stealth game that sees you playing as Sly the Raccoon, supported by his team of misfits consisting of Bentley the Turtle and Murray the Hippo, to retrieve the family's stolen Thievius Raccoonus book. What is this book, you say? Well, it's a book that's passed down Sly's family line, and it contains the Cooper clan's accomplishments, moves, skills, heists, etc. So it's kind of a big deal. Now, glancing at this game, you might think it's fairly kiddish based on the aesthetic. However, I feel that this choice in the aesthetic benefits on many levels. Firstly, it was easier to run on the PS2's restricted hardware, as the graphics weren't as intense to run. Secondly, it made it visually easier to gauge where you were when you were jumping and made it easier to platform with your shadow being so clearly visible on the ground. And if you still think that this game is kiddish, well, the book that was meant to be passed down to Sly on his 8th birthday never happened. Instead, the Fiendish Five attacked the Cooper's house, killed Sly's parents, and took the book. Is murder kiddish? I didn't think so. The high contrast in the levels made it easier to determine where you needed to go, where you could hide, and what the objective items were. This game for me has got to be one of the most well-made and tight controlling games that I've ever played. A lot of platformers back in the late 90s to early 2000s were clunky as hell and just don't hold up today. However, even today, Sly holds up. It was so successful, in fact, that it managed to spawn up a bunch of sequels, including one in 2004, one in 2005, the Sly Cooper Collection, and also Sly Cooper Thieves in Time that was released in 2013, but we haven't really seen anything from him since, which is sad. Moving on to my number 4, Croc. One of the first platformers I've ever played, released in 1997. You play as a crocodile named Croc. I know, very original naming. And it was your goal to go out into the world to release the captured gobbos and defeat Baron Dante. The game was so impressive for the time, boasting a very imaginative and colourful look, which was great for the limited hardware. Back then, this was one of the best looking games available. It had good controls for the time, great level variety, had multiple platforming sequences, even puzzle elements that needed to be overcome. And you know what? Now that I think about it, if this game were to be remade today, I think it would be perfect for the Switch. It's a light-hearted, bright and colourful platformer, a game that can be reintroduced to veterans who grew up on it, but still appealing enough for younger audience who could play on the go if they wanted to. I would absolutely love to play this on the go if given a chance. You could take out the clunky mechanics, you could really refine it, and I think that this would be one of the best platformers to date if done right. Moving on to my number 3, Crazy Taxi. A crazy game for crazy people with crazy gameplay. I loved the attitude of this game. The soundtrack and the gameplay were top notch. Everything was just so energized and fun. And the fact that even if you hit something, your car could just pick up speed and momentum extremely quickly, it made the game so quick, and there wasn't really any punishment for making an error like smashing into a building. It still felt stressful because you were constantly on a time restraint, but the player wasn't punished too hard. It meant that fun was the focus of the game, and that's certainly what everyone had when they played. Now some of you might be saying, "Oi Sean, there've been more than just one Crazy Taxi game, you silly goose." And to that I'd say yes, you're right, ya goose. But they have become a soulless, dead corpse of what the franchise once was. With each new installment, it just got worse. I want to see this franchise reinvigorated, brought back to its roots, back to when it was inspired and fun. Back to when there was life and personality in the franchise. And for those of you who aren't aware what Crazy Taxi is, you pick a driver and it's your job to collect customers, drive them to their destination within the allocated time restraints, and you need to get as many fares as possible before the time runs out. Now the color of the coin and circle around the customer dictates the difficulty of the fare itself. The green fare is the easiest fare and you should be able to knock that off fairly quickly, meaning you can get to your next fare very quickly. However, this comes at a cost. You will get a lower fare and a lower reward for your time. If you go with the orange or red ones, some of the most difficult ones in the game, the fare will take you a long time and the destination will be extremely far away. However, you are rewarded with this with a huge fare price and a big buff to your time. It's all risk and reward. There also were some challenge arenas too, if you wanted to have something else to do other than being one of the world's most dangerous taxi drivers. But this original Crazy Taxi was one of the best games I've ever played and I would love to see it have the remake treatment. Number 2, Twisted Metal 2. The second Twisted Metal for the second spot. Coincidence? I don't know. What I do know is that this game needs a remake ASAP. Twisted Metal 2, in my humble opinion, and that should be treated as fact by the way, is the best Twisted Metal in the entire franchise. It took what was great about Twisted Metal 1 and somehow made the franchise even more, dare I say, twisted? It offered new characters, new locations to blow each other up in, cutscenes with voice acting, and even a deathmatch mode, which me, my brother, and friends would all take turns in destroying each other in. I love the designs of each character and how their personalities would correspond with the car they drove. Characters and vehicles were so diverse, and so too were their accompanying weapons. Enough so that each player could find a character that suited their playstyles and abilities. For me, I always went with Spectre. I found him to be the fastest and most agile vehicle in the game. His low form factor to the ground meant he never really stood out, and since he was so small in comparison to other vehicles, he was a much harder target to hit. The trade-off? Well, his defense and armor was terrible, but this was a sacrifice I was happy to make as no one could hit me. Come get me, suckers! I was able to avoid incoming attacks, hide in certain locations, and make quick getaways. Spectre also had seeking missiles that would target enemies so no aiming was required, and he had machine guns that you could fire constantly when you were chasing someone. If you played against someone who used Spectre, you knew all too well just how annoying it was to be on the receiving end of all of this. I also loved how the game rewarded you for exploring and trying new things. For example, if you blew up the Eiffel Tower, you could create a bridge. A lot of buildings in this game were also destructible and held secret areas and items, so exploration and experimentation was always such a joy to do. Having the technology we have today in terms of graphics and online multiplayer capabilities, this game is in dire need of a remake. The soundtrack in this game was also top notch, and it's so hard to believe that this came out in 1996, and I feel that this game, with today's current technology, cross-platform play, it would be one of the biggest games to date. Just imagine Battle Royale Twisted Metal style. Now that's epic. Now before we get into our number 1, I just want to throw in some honorable mentions. These games in some way left an impact on me that I think they also need a HD remake at the very least. Not only will this allow players to replay the games that they grew up on, but it will also introduce the games to a whole new generation of gamers to enjoy. I won't spend too long on them, but if you've played these games, you know why these need a remake. Soul Reaver. I only played the demo of this game, but it left that much of an impact that I want a fully HD remake release of this game. It was the first game I ever played that expanded the possibilities of gaming in my little pea-brain mind. It had great combat, atmosphere, interesting characters, a story, and it has now developed a cult following. The next honorable mention, the Harry Potter games. I want the whole series remade. Being able to walk around Hogwarts in the graphic capabilities of today would just be magical. I know we're getting Hogwarts Legacy, but I would love to be able to follow Harry around in his schooling years with today's technology. You can change some of those data mechanics and get rid of those stupid missions. Fucking Peacock! And I know people would absolutely eat this up. The last honorable mention is Enter the Matrix. This is basically Max Payne, but I always preferred this as a kid. It built on the story of the Matrix itself, and the gunplay for the time was on point. The bullet time mechanic was one of the best features where you could slow down time, and it really made you feel like you were playing within the Matrix universe. It was so good. Moving on to my number one, baby, let's go. Jak and Daxter. Originally coming out in December 2001 on the PS2, Jak and Daxter fast became one of my favorite games of all time. So much so that I would replay the starting area for hours because I didn't have a memory card. I knew where all the precursor orbs were, I even knew the dialogue off by heart. Growing up, the PlayStation 2 had three main icons in my eyes. Ratchet & Clank, which is getting its current gen release soon, Sly Cooper, and my favorite, Jak and Daxter. Jak and Daxter has such a following online, and many fans have begged for a reboot or a sequel to the game, just something. Now for those of you who don't know, Jak 4 was actually in early stages of development, and as you can see from the photos on screen now, this game departed from the cartoony aesthetic in favor of a more realistic, realized world. It would have been a huge change, but a change I would have welcomed with open arms. And for those of you who have played the third game, it ended in such a way where a sequel was possible, and I understand that there have been some HD remakes for the PS4, but they are buggy as hell and crash constantly. So remaking the franchise again would allow players to enjoy a new, refined version of this classic franchise, whilst also introducing new players to the fanbase. It has such a rich story, which is only improved upon with this second and third sequel. It's an iconic PlayStation mascot, and now that Naughty Dog isn't really working on any Uncharted games, I wouldn't be surprised if the attention has put back onto Jak for a reboot or a sequel. For many, it would be an instant console seller, and is something that fans have been asking for years. But guys, that's my list of the games that I think desperately need a HD remake from the ground up. Let me know what your list is down in the comments below, and if you liked the video, please go ahead, leave a like, it helps out the channel. But thank you guys so much for watching, I really do appreciate that, and I will see you in the next video. Take care guys, bye.